Good morning, everyone. Welcome to a replay of this live broadcast about the ultimate memory improvement book, question mark. And this came in the mail for me yesterday. Super excited. If you're watching the replay, hit the thumbs up. Let me know if you know who this guy is down in the comments below. And I'm going to talk about this very briefly. And it is such an exciting thing to receive in the mail. I'd really be curious if you're joining us. Say hello on the live stream and let me know if you recognize who this guy is, because he's a very, very important figure in memory improvement. And what a beautiful book. This is unbelievable. So beautiful. And I'm just curious if you all know. So type in the chat box as you're joining us where this guy's from, who he is, where you're from, and what you're doing and what you're thinking. And Pink Ribbon has it. Giordano Bruno. Yes, that's right. Exactly. And great to know that this is known. You say, by the way, Anthony live. Yeah. All right. Well, Pink Ribbon here live. Yeah. Good to see you. Hit that thumbs up. Let me know in the chat where you are, what you're doing, what you're thinking. This book is extraordinarily. It's extraordinarily beautiful, and I'm just delighted and honored. And I'm just looking down here because I'm going to set a timer because I have a meeting that I'm going to meet a very special friend who does software. So I'm not going to go on forever and ever today, although I do like to go on forever and ever, as you know. But if you're just joining us now, this is your first time, get subscribed to this channel. Make sure you hit the bell icon. Waiting for a few more people to show up here with a little bit of chatter. Sometimes people say, oh, we'll get to the point and so forth. Well, this is a live stream. You're watching perhaps the replay. If you're live with us now, get engaged, get involved, hit the thumbs up. Tell me where you are in the world. And I'm going to go into this book a little bit. I read only the introduction last night, and I read the back matter. And really beautiful how well done this book is. Incredible. So setting my timer now to 30 minutes. And so if you've got questions about memory improvement while you're here, make sure to dial them in because we're on a clock, and look forward to answering any that you might have. So this book, unbelievable. Look at this. It's just so beautifully done on the shadow of the ideas. And it's gold, really stands out. It's got this wonderful imagery there, which, if you already know Bruno, you have some idea about this. And it's also in the back. Very, very beautiful. Well, there's only 400 signed limited copies from the translator, who is John Michael Greer, and this is copy 234. So really quite amazing. And it's color inside as well, so that's really wonderful, and I'm just so delighted to be going through it. And in any case, it really is one of the books to master. If you haven't read it, you should get hold of it and read it, because there's ideas in it that Bruno actually wrote about in a very obscure and strange way to make sure that not just anybody could figure them out. And so one of the cool things about this translation is that it works to be quite clear, and it has a glossary of terms, and the diagrams are really nicely done. And because there's some color inside of it, it's really helpful as well, to just make it a bit more engaging and so forth. Now, this just came out, and I have long been preparing to do a course just on Bruno. Not just the memory stuff, but Bruno as such, because I don't think you can really understand Bruno's memory techniques if you don't understand the larger projects. The main one being a comprehensive means of knowledge and understanding, and being able to develop these things so that you can remember more and know more, but also reach the right conclusions. So that's a very interesting thing. Now, I don't personally think that such a goal is achievable. I don't even think it's desirable, but we do desire it in our human bodies and our minds. We want that sort of mastery. And there is a sense in which we can get better than that, and one of the ways that you can do that is through dedicated practice. I want to check in with our chats here. If you're joining us live, say hello in the chat box. Let me know where you are in the world. Hit the thumbs up. If you're watching the replay, also use that comment box down below. And let's see here. Manasi's here. Hello, Manasi. Thanks for saying hello. And you're saying watching the live video after a long time from India, pre-med student. And the entrance exam is in 3 days, so pretty nervous. Hopefully it goes well. Well, let me know if you have any questions. Try to relax. I've been through many exams. Bruno, is a great sort of relaxed dude here, at least in statue form. So maybe get an image of someone relaxed in your mind and be relaxed yourself. Rachid says, what's the name of the book, please? It's On the Shadow of the Ideas. It's not always translated that way, but really, really great by Giordano Bruno. And I'm going to later, when I get back from my meeting, I'll post a link to where you can get this book. And you should act fast. I'm sorry I don't have the link prepared just now, but this is copy 234, I think I saw. Yeah, copy 234 of a limited edition set. So you're going to want to act as quickly as possible. Come back to this video later. I'm going to be a couple hours, and then I'll come back and post that link. And let me know in the chat if you've already read this, if you know some of the other translations. Be very excited to know about that. So you'll want to read this though. It's really, really great. And I'm bringing together a number of translations for the course I want to put together on Bruno. And it's a pretty big one. Understanding the larger project is important. So the book is, well, it's about how to use your memory. It's about how to actually think and use your memory. And I don't want to dive too deep into it because I've only read the introduction of this translation, but I have read it in other translations. And really it's about finding the best possible ways to remember things in ways that really stick in your memory, and so that you process it deeper in your mind. And it's about the correct use of what I would call magnetic stations and the correct use of the imagery on those stations. Now, what does correct mean? Correct means having your memory work, right, in the highest possible way, and correct means to you. So you couldn't necessarily follow everything that's said in this book and have it work exactly as described, but by following these recommendations, which I have, you will improve your practice. Manassi says, okay, sounds amazing, buying it for sure. Thanks for the suggestion. Yeah, I mean, you can look it up. Make sure you get this gold one, but come back later, and I'm going to have the link to it down in the description below. But yeah, just this one is very good, very well translated, and highly recommend at least what I've looked at so far. I have gone in a little bit deeper into looking at the text to assess it, but it's just also, I've never seen all of this so nicely laid out. There's a lot of care and craft that went into this, and just look at some of this. Like normally when you see these images in the other versions, they're not as delicious as this to really sink your imagination into. And then because of the beautiful headlines, it's just, this is the royal treatment. This is great. This is, oh man. So, and also there's a practical guide in the back by the translator, which I have read through as well. And the introduction is short, crisp. I wish it was longer because he writes so well about Bruno, and all of his research materials are in the citations, as well as a glossary. And the glossary is short and crisp and concise, but very clear about what all these terms are, and it will improve your practice. So Shlomo says, hey Anthony, hello from Israel, love the videos. Shlomo, great to see you here. Really wonderful. Mark's here. The translator, John Michael Greer. I want to make sure I memorized that correctly. That would be embarrassing. Yeah, that is correct. John Michael Greer, G-R-E-E-R. And if I remember correctly, this is 234 of the limited edition. Let me check that again. I'm so excited. I didn't even really use memory techniques to memorize these things, but you do sometimes get a residual advantage. So yeah, 234, John Michael Greer. Emerson says, send your book to me. I'm going to use it as a teaching text for my T-Talks about Alzheimer's. Do you mean the memory connection? Okay, well, the memory connection is, I just closed it 2 days ago, actually, but we could arrange a copy for you. We'll have to get in touch by email about that. I saw also your comment earlier. I haven't answered it yet, Emerson. Thanks for being here. In terms of that in the masterclass, there's a lot of training about that, but I'd love to know more about what your specific needs are there, because then I could point you more specifically to where in the masterclass it is that that you need to go for that particular thing. But I'm going to get to the comment later, and I look forward to that. John's here, says, Anthony, excited about the book. Excellent. This, I mean, just as an object, I think books are really wonderful to also be beautiful objects. The memory connection for me was a stab in that direction, making a book a beautiful object, which you could never do through Amazon, which is why I did it the way that I did. Currently now unavailable, but that's okay. We will make it available in a different way in the future again. But thanks everybody. If you're here and you had the memory connection already and you enjoyed it, then you should have gotten an email about a webinar that we're doing private just for the memory connection people about what's coming next for the webinar, for the memory connection program, and this is going to be part of it in some small sense. Obviously I can't give you this text, but we could potentially follow along with it if we all get it. Manassi says, I'm going to be using magnetic memory a lot in med school. That's awesome to hear, Manassi. Thank you very much for letting me know, and look forward to seeing you in the masterclass and seeing your memory palaces and homework and so forth. Always remember, doing is the origin of the competence, of the creativity, of the courage, of everything that you need, ultimately leading to even the community that you would need to support your memory goal and the consistency to be competent with these techniques. And one of the ways that I maintain my competence is not only through personal practice, but through continual reading of the literature. And so that's why I'm so glad that this translation appeared. And by the way, thank you to one of you who emailed me about it. I really, really appreciate that. And I do take all your emails seriously, and especially the recommendations. I read what people suggest and I take action on it, and this is the speed of implementation rule. So when someone recommends a book, get it right away. I just had another one recommended to me this morning, opened it up, found it, and away we go. Because it's so important that if you don't take action right away, you just forget. You forget. It's normal. I would too if I didn't. So I always use the speed of implementation rule, and there's a budget for my memory reading to be able to be a better teacher for you all, and just get it. Get what it takes to be the best possible memory instructor I can be. Emerson says, oh yes, I just ordered your book because you said you had extra books. It is a conference on dementia with demos and simulations. I will be taking my magnetic memory method class notebook with me. Okay, excellent, excellent. Yeah, if you ordered it, then it would be on its way. So that should be coming. My wife handled all the delivery and shipping and so forth, so that is underway. So I wouldn't have seen your name, but in any case, really thank you everybody who got the memory connection, and we're gonna be sending it out under different cover in the future. But for now, really excited to think through this and think about how it could be a textbook. But of course, you'd all need a copy, and I recommend this one, even just from the introduction and the material in the back. It's just golden. So, and you know, there's a reason it has a golden cover, I suppose. Excellent. So I'm going to come back and post that link for you, and you can come check out the replay for it. So Manassi says, in case nobody told you that you were doing such an amazing job with your memory teachings, you are my favorite teacher. Thank you so much. Oh, thank you for the kind words, Manassi. I really appreciate that. It's always nice to know that this is making an impact and helpful to people, and it's an honor and a privilege, and I don't take the privilege lightly, which is why I invest in my own memory training and my application. And there are things in here that no matter how many times that you may have read something, when you dive into valuable training, you get more out of it the second time. Repetition is always difference, okay? It's a very, very important concept in learning, is that repetition is always difference, so you can't get enough. And you can return again and again and again to the classics, and they will serve again and again and again, if you can just find in yourself the discipline to go through it again. And of course, you can go through things again in different ways. So because I've read 2 other translations of this book, right, then I'm reading it very, very differently than you would if you'd never read it before. And that's why I can say with such certainty, just reading the introduction and back matter, that, wow, this is golden, right? And I read a little bit of the translation here and there, but I'm very comfortable and confident in saying to you, this is masterful. So, and there's going to be more to be said about it as I read it day after day, and should be maybe a day or 2 before I get through it all. But I'm really, really excited. I'm going to take my time with it. I'm not into speed reading as such. I like to do what I call bibliomancy, which is a different kind of reading altogether, and it's got some similarities with speed reading, but I prefer it. Nancy says, I understand cramming isn't the best way to study, probably the worst, but do you have any techniques or tips when you absolutely have to cram? Yes, well, the number one tip is don't ever put yourself in a position where you have to cram. You want to dig your wells before you're thirsty and have memory techniques on your side. And if you're strategic about it, not only will a real solid memory practice help you organize your time better and organize the information better, but you'll never get into cram. Now, if I had to cram, then what I would do is I would use bibliomancy, which I can't exactly teach exactly correctly on this call. So if you're in the master class, basically the master plan teaches you bibliomancy and it gives you the short form version of it. But in brief, what you want to do is know how to read books correctly, and by correctly I mean in a way that you're able to boil down the 20% that matters and not get hung up in the details, not fantasize and have illusions about needing to memorize everything or verbatim or any of that nonsense. What you really need usually is just the core 20%. Now that's not universally true, but it is almost normally true for most purposes. So if you can figure out how to boil books down to the most important 20%, then you're already ahead of the game, and you're not really cramming, you're just reading strategically, right? And then you memorize that 20%, and then you really focus on making sure that you're recalling that 20%, and that all happens through recall rehearsal. And recall rehearsal is also where you contemplate, you connect, you get rhizomatic dip, deep, rich associations. You dip into the deepness, and you do it through the actual practice of recall, which requires an understanding of primacy effect, recency effect, and serial positioning effect, and it requires really diving deep into those tools, because they are tools. No one skips repetition, but as I just said, repetition is always difference. And if you're doing the repetition correctly, you actually can get a lot more out of fewer repetitions that lead to more than just memory. It leads to knowledge. It leads to new thoughts. And this is kind of what Bruno had as part of his project, and others at the time had as part of their project as well, is how do you have a systematic way of tapping into all knowledge and making better decisions? I would just scale it down, be a bit more modest, and say, look, I just want to master this topic. I want to be able to think it through. I want to be able to talk off the top of my head about it in an intelligent, reasonable, ethical, honest way. Not talk about things that I don't know, but be able to engage with what I don't know based on what I do know from the highest possible level through actual memorized content that I'm able with great certainty to speak about with specificity to the terms. So it really, really matters. It matters that Bruno was executed in 1600, for example. And there's memory tools you can use, and I hope I got that correct, but that's how my memory is. And sometimes you get little things blurred, because I think it was 1610 that Matteo Ricci died, right? So, and I think his dates were 1552 to 1610. And so you can get these kinds of things where, oh, maybe I blurred things up a little bit. But generally, if you're just honest about it and you just say, I think that was correct, instead of, it's absolutely must be correct because it was in my memory palace, right? I mean, you've got to allow for uncertainty here and there. And that's what an honest ethics of learning and memorization will do for you. And that's what focusing on the things that matter will do for you, and really being careful to craft knowledge around stuff and how to think, how to engage with knowledge, how to be not too sure, but also really, really certain that you've done your due diligence and you're just able to speak and be honest. Like, I think I recall it this way. And if not, I'm happy to be corrected, but that's what I encoded. You're going to be taken much more seriously in the first place just because you're cautious about your knowledge, and then your knowledge is actually more profound because you're treating it with care. And you know, it's just the way that it goes if you want to be onto the top of your game. So Sarah is here. Oh, Sarah, great to see you. Everybody, Sarah Kirkall has a great YouTube channel. You've got to check it out. And she sometimes comments on my videos, so you can click over to her that way. But definitely look at some of her stuff, all about psychology and learning and creativity, and some interesting thoughts about literature, and really interesting channel. So Sarah says, Anthony, how are you? Curious, how do you organize your readings? Do you set aside a time each day? Yes, reading must be organized. It must be scheduled. And organizing reading is very simple. Read the book until it's done, right? And read at certain times of day, but also read intermittently. And I like having pillars of books. So I just have the pillar of books on the counter. I have the pillar of books by my reading area, and I just love to rack them and stack them and then roll through them. And you know what? I'm flexible. Sometimes I will interrupt what I'm reading to read something else. So, for example, this arrived yesterday. Everything else gone because this is now the thing to read, right? So I've been reading Herding Tigers, which is about being a creative manager of a creative team so I can do my work better and get more videos out and get more podcasts out and just do better for people. And Herding Tigers, I can finish later. I will finish it after now I go through this. And there's just being flexible is important as well. I've also been reading a novel, but that novel can go aside. I'm also reading a novel for the Brisbane German Book Club for the end of the month, and I've got time to get through it, but also I don't necessarily feel like I have to have completed the whole novel to have a decent conversation about it, and I'm really going there not to talk about the novel as such, but rather to keep up with my German skills. But ideally, I'll be able to finish that novel. But the things that matter, you just read the book until it's done, and you don't skip to any other books except for special circumstances, like when it's gold and golden, because it's a really good translation. But like I said, this will probably take a day or two, and basically I read in the morning before computers come on, and I also read in the evening before calling it a day, and then I read intermittently throughout the day. So sometimes I'll set a timer. Sometimes I use an app called Awareness if I'm on the computer and it dings a bell and, time to take a break, and I'll go and read during that break. Or I might just actually read my memory. So for example, I'm working a lot with some Sanskrit right now, learning some Sanskrit, and so I'll just read the Sanskrit from my memory. And it's not reading a book, but it is reading something that was written into my mind, which is what this book is about, is how do you write inside your mind? And how do you write inside your mind in such a way that you're able to create knowledge as a result? And so I was deeply influenced by Bruno many, many years ago, and it's been a huge influence on the magnetic memory method. And there's many differences, but also many similarities. And so one of the best things that you can do is just to continue reading and reading and reading. And not just about memory, of course. There is memory training everywhere. Every book has memory training. Every novel, every book has something to say about memory. And the more you know about memory, then the more you see it, the more evident it is that everything is giving you memory tools, or it's giving you the opportunity to exercise your memory tools. So Sarah says, I love the pillar of books. Thanks for sharing. My pleasure. Thanks for being here. Shlomo says, any tips about how to best use mnemonics in a more day-to-day scenario, like at an event? I find it very distracting to try to create images and pick locations. Is it just a matter of experience? It is a matter of experience, and that distraction will go away. It will go away, and it's just a matter of practice. So it hasn't come out yet, but I'm on an interview on a really fairly significant data science podcast, and he surprised me. First time it ever happened that I was on a podcast interview that someone challenged me to actually memorize something while we were talking. And it was mildly distracting, I must admit, and it was really interesting what happened, and I did and didn't get 100%, and you'll hear that on the interview. But basically what happened is he gave me a list of names, and there was one name I was caught on, and when I just said, we'll hold that for a second and come back to it, which is very common in memory championships and in memory demonstrations, that someone will have to pause on a particular name. They'll get it later. But I didn't get it later purely because when we came back to it, I said, now, that name that I didn't get, and he said, it's because of your religious thing, right? And then I said, it must be Mary. You may have heard me tell this story before. I can't wait till the interview comes out because it was pretty hilarious. But 100% accuracy except for that, let's call it a near miss, which he helped trigger because he supplied this clue. It's because of your religious thing. And not that I'm religious, more that I have an aversion to religious things. So Mary may have been a bit of a thing, an issue for me. In any case, it was distracting to answer your question, Shlomo. But I think, and I haven't heard the interview yet myself, but I think it'll sound pretty smooth anyway, because I'm just used to encoding information in everyday life. Someone tells me a name, I grab it, make an image, and no one really is paying as much attention to you as you think they are. So just create magnetic imagery. Create magnetic imagery when there's no reason to, just to get used to doing it in real time, and submit to the distraction. You don't need to actually turn the distraction into an enemy. Just be open to it and get used to it, and then it'll disappear. It'll fade. It'll actually become your tool, because you might, well, so I better hurry up here and get it done. But there's no escaping the practice, and the practice can go much faster if you submit yourself to it. And last month in the Magnetic Mary Method Mastermind, we had some really good training on some particular practices that you can do that'll get you super fast with a PAO. Whether it's a MMM PAO or some other sort of version of the PAO, it'll get you going real fast, so you'll be less distracted in real life. But you need to take the private practice into real life. Just yesterday I had someone over here, and a photographer, and he asked about cards, and I memorized some cards for him, and he was just blown away. But I was a little bit out of practice, and I was blown away because I didn't even encode some of the cards. It was going too fast, and I was like, oh geez, I'm gonna make an ass of myself here. But I didn't, ultimately, and it's because of the practice that has built up over years and years, that even seeing the Jack of Spade without taking the step to do it, and the Queen of Diamonds without taking the step to do it, it has a much better chance of getting encoded anyway. I don't want to get mystical or even be put under test conditions for that, because it was really just a couple of cards, and I was just doing a couple of cards in this demonstration. But I was asking him, do you remember what it was? And he said no, and I turned it over, or I said it and turned it over, and then there it was. And I was explaining how the competitions go and so forth. And then I stopped and I said, I'm not even going to go any further because I didn't code it. And then I just thought, no, wait a second. It was the Jack of Spades, and I turned it over, and it was. And then I thought, oh, that must have been the Queen of Diamonds, and turned it over, and it was. And so it was a really interesting experience. But I wouldn't want to bet chips on that too much. But you'll find that those sorts of things happen to you, but you do need to be doing the encoding. So another example would be something like a list of names where you're practicing in an event, and then by virtue of having done the other names, you may find that the name you missed will come automatically. I wouldn't rest on that though, and certainly things will happen like my Mary example, where you have an aversion to certain things, perhaps. I don't know if he's right, but that was his guess, because we'd had a long conversation about atheism and skepticism and blah, blah, blah. Not that I'm an atheist, but nonetheless very skeptical person. And that's where his guess came from. And that was enough to trigger the Pieta, because the Pieta is my normal image for the name Mary. But I might need to work on refining it, but also this just happens sometimes, where the encoding just isn't as crisp and clear and precise as you would like, and that's a very powerful lesson to have in life, even if you do ultimately get it back. Another name where I had this experience was Pascal, where I just chose the wrong image. Pascal's wager came to mind, and I didn't at that time have anything for Pascal, because I never really met a Pascal before. And so I just used the vague concept of God from Pascal's wager. But then I struggled with it. I ultimately did get it back. I was very happy about that, and it's just an effect of lots of practice. But I realized that I need to now have a more solid image than just the abstract concept of God for Pascal. So I then thought of the Sistine Chapel painting of God, and then, well, I assume that the next time I meet a Pascal, that's going to come to mind, and I'm going to remember the previous Pascal where I struggled because I just had this vague concept of God and Pascal's wager, and it just wasn't an image. It wasn't something that I'd seen with my own eyes, and then it doesn't work as well. So same thing with Mary. I haven't seen the Pieta with my own eyes. I've just seen images of it, and it's a concept that needs more clarity. So Mary quite contrary might throw in there. Think of other Marys, and that'll be more useful in the future. Anyway, this I'm very excited to diving more deep into, and very excited about it, and look forward to talking more about it with you. Manasi says, I've studied Sanskrit for 5 years, so nice to know that you study it too. It's a beautiful language. I just started. I only have one thing in my head so far, and it's really beautiful, and it's very helpful in my meditative practice, but I'm going to go further. It's the Ribhu Gita. There's a video from Gary Weber that goes through it, and I'm following that based on evolving beyond thought, and really intense. Like, I was skeptical of doing that sort of thing, but now that I'm doing it, it's awesome. And skepticism is good. Skepticism is a tool. It's powerful. If you're just joining us, hit that thumbs up. We only got a few more minutes to go. And I'd love to catch up with any questions for you, that, or answers that you, if you have questions. Stay tuned for more about this. Come back to the replay. The link will be there to where you can grab this book on the site, and I hope you will get it. It's a very interesting book in and of itself, and this translation, by all appearances, is very crisp. And as I say, it's worth every penny just for the front matter and the back matter. The introduction is great, very short, crisp, but I think if you just read the introduction and the conclusion on its own, you will see for yourself the extraordinary value on offer here. And yeah, you're going to need to hurry up because limited edition. I'm glad I got one. I seem to have gotten one in the middle of the pile, which is a lot of fun. So that's really all I wanted to talk about today, was that this came, and I'm very excited about it because it is a new translation, and new translations are awesome, and it really kind of inspires me to pick up my speed with translating the Shigua Jifa, which is the Matteo Ricci book that would be really, really great to have out in the world. So that's still yet to come. And yeah, again, if you have the memory connection, I hope you got the email about the webinar that we're having later this month, private, just for you all, for being part of the Magnetic Memory Method print newsletter and that project. And my alarm just went off, so 1 or 2 last minutes if anybody has any comments or questions, and then we'll be out of here. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I really appreciate you coming to check out this book, and we'll have the mass exodus, but 1 or 2 minutes before we go, and I'll just conclude by saying it is such a beautiful day to go out and create memory palaces. Use those memory palaces, and Shlomo, if you just want to practice, just find information that matters. Find the 20% of information in the world that's going to make a difference to your life and start memorizing it. If it's the theme song for Spider-Man, memorize the theme song for Spider-Man. You'd be amazed how edifying it can be to sing songs. It doesn't have to be the Spider-Man song, but think about what you could do to instantly improve your life so that by the end of every single day, your life is better. I was on a call with one of my fellow mnemonists last night, a lesser known figure so far, but he's coming out with some new stuff, music training for Mnemonics coming out soon. And it is really wonderful to just, he was asking, well, how you deal with lyrics? And I was like, well, let's go through some poetry. And just lyrics I memorized years ago, just coming off. And I was like, yeah, that might be a little bit glitchy. And then looking it up, and I was like, you know what, that poem, I think there's another version, and then trying to find the other version because I'm sure that I memorized it correctly. And in this case, there are variations, but I couldn't find the one that I'd memorized. In any case, thanks for your question, Gene. Good to see you. This is On the Shadow of the Ideas. So this particular version is by, did I remember correctly, John Michael Greer, and this is 234, I think, of the limited edition. Where's the page? Let's look. 234. John Michael Greer. Memory is intact. A small memory feat, but this is, Shlomo, how it works. Just memorize everyday things. In this case, I didn't even encode these things, but if I wanted to, 234 has an image, and you just work with it. And John Michael Greer, I would just start to work with it. And that's what I'll do after I get on this call, because that will be something that I want to keep in my mind and in my memory. And this whole idea of the numbered limited edition, that was such a good idea. I should have done it with the memory connection and numbered each and every one and signed everyone. So next time. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Really appreciate meeting with you. Come back to the replay of this. It'll be, Gmail notified you, so it'll be in your Gmail box. You can come back maybe 5, 6, 7 hours from now, follow that link, get this book, let me know that you got it, and I'm going to actually be in touch with the publisher myself to think about how that I could, in a meaningful way, supply all the students with copies, or get them to do it independently or whatever, so that we're all on the same page with the same edition. But ideally, actually, to tell you the truth, the best thing is going to be to read more than one edition, and so we'll talk about that in the future. If you're a real serious student of memory techniques, stay tuned for more about that, and read, 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 and then reread and reread and reread. This is now my 4th time through this book, and again, I haven't just more than glanced at the translation itself, but just revisiting it through the eyes of someone else, through the translator's introduction and the back matter, it's just like, there is so much more to enjoy, so much more to understand, so much more to practice with, so much more to implement. The rabbit hole goes very deep, my friends, and it is very, very rewarding as it unlocks your brain, your connection with all the space in the world surrounding you, your connection with all the knowledge available and yet to be available, because the more you know, the more you can know, and the more you encode, the more you can encode, because you have more memory tools to work with. So that's all I'll say for now. Thanks again for being here. Till we have a chance to speak again, come visit me at magneticmemorymethod.com and keep yourself magnetic. Bye-bye.